I've already started Vlogmas and I didn't realise. It's June. And I've started Vlogmas.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I read a lot of books. Today's book is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. I believe this was actually her first book that she wrote. It was published in 2019. I've read other Stacey Halls books before and I love the way she writes. It's just, there's a beauty to her writing, and even though it's a slightly slower pace than I usually read, it still has you hooked. I'll get in with that blurb for you. Fleetwood Shuttleworth is 17 years old, married and pregnant for the 4th time. But as the mistress at Gawthorpe Hall, she still has no living child, and her husband Richard is anxious for an heir. When Fleetwood finds a letter she isn't supposed to read from the doctor who delivered her 3rd stillbirth, she is dealt with the crushing blow that she will not survive another pregnancy. Then she crosses paths by chance with Alice Gray, a young midwife. Alice promises to help her give birth to a healthy baby and to prove the physician wrong. As Alice is drawn into witchcraft accusations that are sweeping the northwest, Fleetwood risks everything by trying to help her. But is there more to Alice than meets the eye? Soon the two women's lives will become bound together as the legendary trial at Lancaster approaches, and Fleetwood's stomach continues to grow. Time is running out and both their lives are at stake. Only they know the truth. Only they can save each other. This, as you can tell, is quite hard-hitting at the beginning due to where Fleetwood is in her life at the age of 17 and pregnant for a 4th time. There are a lot of talk of miscarriage and stillbirth at the beginning of the book, so if that is a trigger for you, I probably don't recommend this book. The journey that Fleetwood goes on in regards to those pregnancies and in response to the letter that she finds that tells her that she's not going to survive another pregnancy, obviously it puts a bit of a darkness over her when she's there going, is my husband trying to kill me? If I do survive this pregnancy, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if I don't survive this pregnancy, if I have another stillbirth or another miscarriage? So it's very, very dark at the beginning in regards to that storyline. The moment that you realise that she's 17 and is on her 4th pregnancy and you realise how young she was when she was married off, it feels very... The storyline in regards to the witch trials was incredibly interesting to me. You might know if you've seen other book reviews from me and like if you've gotten to know me a bit through the books, I'm very interested in the witch trials. I find it incredible that it's a moment in our history. I find it very interesting to look into kind of how it happened and how people reacted to it, why it happened, the who, what, why and where of everything. I find it incredibly interesting, and the fact that this is set in England, so I feel like a lot of the time you look at the witch trials, you mainly look at Salem witch trials in America, in Massachusetts. I haven't seen that much about the English witch trials, but it is still incredibly interesting to see. The Familiars of the title is based on the idea that every witch has a familiar, and throughout the book, the people who are involved in the witch trials, there are talks of seeing their familiars. There is one character who is accused of having a familiar who is a toad, which gets a bit of a chuckle from some of the other characters, but it's a maid that says that her mistress's familiar is a toad because it jumped out of a fire, and that the mistress then popped it outside, and it was just like, you sure it's not just a toad that managed to get into the house? It's one of those things where you just like, I really don't understand how that delirium caught hold, really. I mean, in America, I think they did, ultimately, there have been some things saying that maybe it was some bad rye that had fermented and gone wrong, and that people were basically getting high from it, and they started seeing things that weren't there, and then there was the hysteria of it all, which this book does kind of look at the hysteria of it, but then it also brings in a bit of magical realism. There's elements of it that just feel a bit magical, especially with the midwife Alice, when there's comparisons of her eyes to a fox's eyes, and the way the fox is incorporated into the story. It's just very, very clever. And I haven't shown you the book cover yet, but as with the other Stacey Halls books, they're just stunning covers. I don't know who does the artwork for these, I need to look it up, but it's absolutely stunning. Fleetwood has a pet dog, and there's actually points when there's a question mark over why Fleetwood hasn't been accused of being a witch, considering that her familiar could be her dog. Maybe it's because of her social standing. And then you looking at the relationships between Fleetwood and her husband Richard, with her mother, with the man who she sees as a father figure, and how that relationship is twisted when Roger, the father figure, is not actually her father, it's a kind of an older man who's friends with the family, and she's seen him as a father figure for quite a while, but then she realises his involvement in accusing people of being witches. And you see, it's kind of a coming of age story, because at the beginning, Fleetwood seemed very young and very naive, which is understandable because she's 17. I think there were some little moments when she's almost a little bit unlikable in that naivety. Throughout the book, you can see her grow stronger, and you realise that no, she's not just going to be stood on for other people to get up. She starts to realise that she does have a voice, and I think for the time that it's set in is quite an empowering thing, because this was at a time, it's like early 1600s, so it's a time when women didn't really have a say in anything. They were just housewives. They were there to produce heirs for their husbands. And throughout the book you actually see Fleetwood saying that she doesn't want any daughters. She tells people that if she does have children, she wants to have boys. She doesn't want a daughter to go through the life that she has had coming up to this point. And so when you look at that relationship with her mother and her family, and you realise what she has been put through since she was a baby, basically, and you find out about her family's money struggles and what they did to and with Fleetwood as she grew up. Yeah, it's just an incredible story of growing up, finding yourself, friendship, which is gorgeous, and then you've got the witch trials thrown in there as well. I say thrown in like it's an afterthought. It's not. It's a constant stream, especially with the book being called The Familiars. It's about the witch trials and Fleetwood looking at everything that's happening around her and going, what is happening? Why are you accusing this person of being a witch? And then she goes on her own kind of investigative journey of trying to find out why these people are being accused of witches, why the men involved seem to be so hell-bent on this power. There's even questions at the end of the book for like book clubs where you look at that part of that story and just thinking, why wasn't Fleetwood accused of being a witch? What do you think was the goal of the men in the book? Do you think that they actually thought people were witches, or was it more of a power trip? Because they realised that these women were actually learning things, that they didn't need men, and the men were feeling threatened or something. It's just so interesting. And I just love the fact that you've got this young girl. It's like you've plucked somebody from the 21st century and popped them in the 1600s. It's just like, she's just somebody who was just born in the wrong time, kind of. And she's looking around this world thinking, hang on a second, this is ridiculous. But yeah, as you can tell, I really enjoyed this book. This one is 400 pages. Yeah, so I'd probably put it more about 370 maybe, when you could take out the chapters of the other book and everything. And it's in contemporary fiction, historical fiction and literary fiction. I'm surprised that it isn't got the magical realism in there, but I think, to be fair, a lot of it is very subtle and it's a bit open-ended, so there's no actual magical stuff. It's a bit more of a question mark. It's just like, even though there is kind of the connection between the witches and the animals, it's never explicitly stated. So it feels like there's magical realism, but it's not quite there. Does that make any sense? I really, really enjoyed this book. It was just so clever. It has a couple of funny elements in it. It's got that dark side of it that I really enjoyed, and the fact that it's all centred around the British witch trials is just... I loved it. I loved it. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay safe, everybody. Bye, baby boy.